In the heart of London, nestled behind the golden gates of Buckingham Palace, there was a room that no one spoke of. It was not grand, or adorned with the splendour expected of royalty. No velvet curtains, no shining chandeliers, just simple walls, faded wallpaper, and a soft light that filtered through the dust of years untouched. The sound of footsteps echoing in the hallways was a familiar one, but this room, tucked away at the far end of a seldom used corridor, was not frequented by dignitaries or the public. It was a room meant for solitude, quiet, and contemplation. A secret, even in the grandest of places. Queen Victoria, a woman of strength, of duty, of relentless dedication to her kingdom, had built a life that the world admired and respected. Yet behind the curtains of her public persona, there was another truth, a truth she kept hidden, like a delicate treasure locked away in her heart. As a young queen, she never imagined the weight the crown would bring. She never foresaw how it would consume her, how it would create a distance between her and the simple joys of life. But over time, as the years of reign grew longer, so did the burden of that very duty. The room, this secret chamber, was her only escape. It was here, in this space of stillness, that she could shed the formalities of court life. Here, she could be herself, alone with her thoughts, her memories, her grief. Imagine, my dear friend, Queen Victoria writing in her diary on February 7th, 1863. Dear Diary, I write in the quiet of my room, though this room is not like others. This is my sanctuary, my refuge. I keep it hidden, even from my own children, for they cannot understand the need for such a place. Here, I do not wear my crown. Here, I am not the queen. I am simply Victoria, a woman who misses her love, her prince. His letters still lie upon the desk, unopened, though I have read them 1,000 times. I can hear his voice in my mind, feel his hand in mine. The world knows me as the widow, but they do not see the woman I have become. This room is my only solace, and I shall keep it so, until I need it no longer. My dear friend, the room itself was modest, almost unremarkable at first glance. But when you stepped inside, the weight of its silence was palpable. The air seemed to hold on to the memories of every person who had ever passed through its walls, though no one had truly entered, except for the Queen. The walls, once covered in rich floral wallpaper, had now faded to a soft, muted hue. A pattern of roses, nearly invisible in the dim light, crept up the corners like a faint memory. Dust clung to the edges of the ornate wainscoting, adding to the room's sense of stillness. Even the floorboards, though polished and gleaming, felt somehow hollow, as if they too were holding their breath, waiting for a sound that never came. The furniture was sparse, but each piece told a story of its own. A dark wood chair sat beside a writing desk, its surface cluttered with papers, a few half-finished sketches, and a single inkwell, still filled with ink as if to preserve the Queen's last thoughts. The desk itself was unassuming, not the grand gilded desks found in the royal chambers, but a more humble piece, one that perhaps Victoria had chosen herself, for its simplicity, its quiet elegance. Beside the desk, A velvet chaise lounge sat in the corner, worn at the edges but still dignified, like a companion that had witnessed many sleepless nights. On it, Victoria would sometimes rest, leaning back into its soft embrace, letting the weight of the crown fall away. It was in these moments, after the world had gone to bed and the palace was draped in shadows, that she could allow herself to simply be. And then there were the portraits. Portraits of Albert, so lovingly painted that one could almost feel the warmth of his presence through the brushstrokes. His eyes, those deep, kind eyes, seemed to follow you no matter where you stood in the room. A smile, faint but evident, tugged at the corners of his lips in one of the portraits, capturing a moment of lightness, a time before the weight of grief descended upon the Queen. But there were other portraits as well, of their children, their faces frozen in time, caught in moments of joy that Victoria had not been able to experience in the same way. Their smiles were bright, but there was always a distance in her eyes, a look that seemed to say, "I am here, but my heart is elsewhere." Perhaps she knew, even then, that she would never fully be able to reconcile her public role with her personal sorrow. The room was a reflection of the Queen herself, a delicate balance of strength and vulnerability. The small, personal items scattered throughout the space, her favourite books, a well-worn shawl draped over the chaise, a vase with a single rose, spoke to a side of her that was rarely seen by the world, a side that yearned for peace, for solace, for moments of quiet joy amidst the chaos of her royal duties. Among the many treasures kept in the secret room, it was the letters that seemed to have the most power. They were the most personal, the most intimate, and perhaps, in their unread form, the most painful. The first letter Victoria had ever received from Albert was one she kept under her pillow, close to her heart. It had been written when they were still courtship, just before they were wed, a time when their love was fresh, untainted by the pressures of the crown. She would read it often, her fingers brushing over the ink, as if she could absorb his words directly into her soul. Written on June 17th, 1840, it read, "My dearest Victoria, I can hardly express the joy I feel in writing to you. The days seem endless without you near, and I find myself counting the moments until we are together again. You must know that it is not just your beauty that I admire, but your strength, your spirit, which shines brighter than any crown. I look forward to a future with you, one filled with love and purpose. Yours always, Albert." In her secret room, the letter was more than just paper and ink. It was a token of the promise they had made to each other, a promise that had seemed so unbreakable at the time. And yet, in the years that followed, Victoria had been forced to face the crushing reality that even the strongest love could not defy the ravages of time and fate. After Albert's death, the letters took on new significance. They were no longer simply love letters, but lifelines to a past that had disappeared. Victoria kept them all, the ones Albert had sent her, and the ones she had never sent to him. She would read them in her secret room, tracing the lines of his handwriting as if she could still hear his voice in the words. But there were other letters, too. Letters from her children, from friends, and even from her government officials. They were filled with words of gratitude, requests for advice, and offers of support. But they never seemed to reach her in the same way as Albert's letters. They were filled with the duties of a queen, the responsibilities of a ruler, and yet, in this room, where her true self could emerge, they felt hollow. The letters she could never send, the ones she had written and then discarded, lay in piles in the corner of the room. They were expressions of love, of longing, of grief, letters to Albert, to her children, and sometimes to herself. Words she had never spoken, secrets she had never shared. On nights when the winds howled outside, rattling the windows of the palace, Victoria would often sit at her desk, pen in hand, staring at the blank pages before her. She could feel the weight of the world pressing down on her, but it was in these quiet moments that she allowed herself to truly grieve. Sometimes she would write in her diary, pouring her heart out on the pages. Other times she would simply sit in the silence, lost in her thoughts. It was here, in her secret room, that she could shed the role of the queen and just be a woman who had loved and lost, who had seen both the beauty and the cruelty of life. My dear friend, let us imagine another diary entry from April 19th, 1865, where Queen Victoria writes, "My dearest Albert, it is hard to find words to describe the emptiness I feel now that you are gone. The world has changed in ways I cannot understand. The crown, which once seemed so important, now feels heavy upon my head. I long for the simplicity of our life together, for the days when we could laugh, when we could be free. But those days are gone, and I am left to carry on alone in the shadow of your absence. I miss you more than I could ever say." These entries were not meant for anyone else to read, but in the silence of the room, they felt like an expression of her truest self. They were not the words of a queen, but of a woman who had experienced deep, soul-wrenching loss and found no other place but this room to let it all out. As the years went by, the secret room became more of a relic of the past. Victoria's family, once close, had grown distant as her children grew older, and her duties as a queen continued to demand her attention. The room, which had once been a sanctuary, became little more than a memory. It wasn't until after Victoria's death that anyone discovered the hidden room. Her children, now adults with families of their own, were the ones who stumbled upon it. They had grown up with the image of their mother as a stern, unyielding queen, but in this room they found a different side of her, one filled with love, grief, and a quiet longing that had never been shared. In the room, they found the letters, the portraits, the small, personal items that spoke of a mother they had never truly known. They found the traces of a woman who had lived not only for her country, but for the love she had once shared with her prince. And in these things, they realized how much their mother had kept hidden from the world. As we lay here tonight, my dear friend, let us reflect on the nature of secrets and memories. The things we keep hidden, not because we wish to deceive, but because they are too precious, too painful, or too personal to share. Queen Victoria's secret room was a place where her memories lived, a place where she could grieve, reflect, and hold on to the love that had shaped her life. Perhaps, in our own lives, we all have secret rooms, places where our memories are kept safe, where we hold the things that have shaped us, the loves and losses that define who we are. And maybe, like Victoria, we too need a place where we can just be ourselves, away from the world, away from the roles we are expected to play. Remember, my dear friend, that we are all human, and sometimes the greatest act of love is to keep something close to our hearts, even if no one else ever understands why.